with Paul Daner, Mark Shalafoo, from listener questions to some running gags. Insider stories, ambush light, that dad life and respect for flags. Kick off the weekend, alright? It's the Growler Bet show. It's Dey Light.
All right, welcome into the latest edition of Dey Light. Paul Daner Jr., Mark Shalafoo. Excited to be with you. Mark, how we doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm hanging in there, and that's what's important this time of year is all the holiday stuff starts to ramp up. There's gifts to worry about, frantic shopping, illness is circling, but the big game Thursday night went my way, so I'm happy right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to be happy about for Bengals fans because they wake up with something that has been in very short supply this holiday season. Hope, positivity, yeah, reason for belief, and that is the Thursday night football result goes their way, and now, so you're saying there's a chance? I mean, it's not impossible. We have a lot we're going to get to on today's show. We're going to remind you again about our live show that's coming on Sunday down at BetMGM Nation Kitchen and Bar at the Banks, where we're going to be giving away so many prizes, including very special signed vintage jerseys. We'll get into that in a second. We are going to talk a little bit about swords.
Yes.
We got to talk about swords today, because swords are in the news. Joe Burrow gifting his offensive lineman swords. We are going to talk about, there's some good questions that are out there about not just the playoffs, but also about Chase Brown, about some of the issues that you've seen on the offensive line. Of course, we can't have a day where we don't talk about that. But, there's a lot of good stuff, some ambush light. You know what we do here. We're going to get into all of that on today's show. But first, let's talk about these playoffs, Mark.
Yeah. You know what? It was crazy to me, that game last night, just because it did not start well for the Chargers. And as a Bengals fan, I'm like, oh, it's just more of the same. We finally get a little bit of hope, and it's going to get dashed right now. The Chargers made it interesting. I'm like, it's still the shoe's going to drop here. It's going to be ugly. They're going to lose in heartbreaking fashion. We're going to get Bengaled again. But no, they pulled it out. So now that you're saying there's still a realistic shot. I threw in realistic. You didn't say that.
Yeah, realistic isn't the word. I would say if before it was slim to none, I think it's just slim now, right? I think we can go with slim as the proper word for this. Here's the basics. So for those of you that don't know, here's after Thursday night's result of the Broncos losing in LA to the Chargers, what has happened? The Bengals need to win out. Obviously Sunday against Cleveland, home game after that against Denver, and then week 18 at Pittsburgh. That's number one. The Broncos need to lose out, which would be their next game at Paycor Stadium against the Bengals. And then they host the Chiefs, the 13-1 Chiefs, in week 18. The Dolphins and the Colts each need to lose one more time. Okay, so the Dolphins play San Francisco at home this weekend, and then they go to Cleveland and to the Jets. So they could sweep that. And the Colts play the Titans, who we just saw last week, are starting Mason Rudolph. They go to the Giants, who I don't know who they're starting. I think Eli Manning might be starting that game. And then Jacksonville, who's terrible and fighting for the number one seed. They're playing all teams that are fighting for the number one overall pick. So you need the Colts to lose one of those three. The new math from our New York Times playoff projector has the Bengals playoff chances at 10%. How do we feel about 10%?
10% is better than it was.
Yeah, it's better. It's better than it was. So there is a little bit of hope. I would say we've been on the 12-leg parlay thing here on this whole deal. I think we're at okay, you just hit the 5th leg, and now you're like, I think there's a chance that I could be buying the car. I think we might be buying the new car. I think I can see it happening. How are these bets going to miss?
Right.
We're 5 legs in. It's all going our way.
You look at the last 7 legs, you're like, okay, these 4 or 5 here, these are layups. These are just locks, stone cold locks. And now we're kind of looking at a 2-leg parlay. That's all it is, really. It's just a couple coin flips. You win a couple coin flips, and we're in the playoffs, and nobody
Yes.
ever thought that was possible.
So
I don't know. It's not a great path.
well,
But
here's a couple of problems. Here's a couple of problems with this. One, will Kansas City be playing for anything in Week 18 against Denver? If they clinch, so they play Houston, and then they go to Pittsburgh the next 2 weeks. So not easy games for them, and they haven't been playing the best brand of football by Chiefs standards. But if they are still having to play for something against Denver, you'll see Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and everybody out there playing in Denver, and that changes things dramatically for that potentially happening. But if they win the next two, they will have clinched the number 1 seed, and they can rest guys for that last game. So you probably need Kansas City to lose to either Houston or at Pittsburgh. Probably.
And Mahomes is now magically healthy again, right? Like he had a high ankle sprain. People are like, he could be out weeks. And now he's just fully participating in practice and he's just good to go. Just classic Mahomes.
Yeah, classic Miyagi fixing, just straight, just putting his hands on the ankle, and it's all better. We've seen this show before. Can it not always line up the same way every December? Like Mahomes might be out forever. It's an ankle. Oh no, and then he comes back the next week, or he battles through it, and next he's like running for game deciding first downs in the Super Bowl. I mean, we've seen that show before. No, and everyone's counting them out right now. I did this last. Yep. I can't believe I'm still mad. I took the bait last year, not believing in Kansas City because their offense had been so bad all year, and it just didn't seem like they had all the same stuff. And then they went on a crazy run. They do seem like the ultimate flip the switch team that they just decide, okay, we're ready now. So will they be ready though in Week 18? Is the real question. There's one other fatal flaw here that the biggest problem I've had with this, and I'm not saying, this is certainly possible that all these things could happen. The biggest concern that I've had with all of this, the Bengals are still yet to beat a team with a winning record this year. And they have to do that twice in order to make this. Inevitably, your team still has to play better if you're going to hit the 12-leg parlay. That's the part of this and maybe the Steelers will have clinch their spot and be resting guys in Week 18. But at some point, you got to beat a good team. And that's really kind of been the story of the season. It would almost be fitting if everything fell into place and they couldn't beat the Steelers or couldn't beat the Broncos and everything else happened for them, because that's they really have themselves to blame for being in this spot, because so many of any one of these games that they should have won or had big leads in or fumbled away or whatever, would make this a completely different picture that isn't a 12-leg parlay, but instead is one you've maybe already cashed out on. So I don't know. If I'm ranking the 3 different scenarios here, Bengals winning out, Broncos losing out, or the whole Dolphins-Colts thing, the thing that I'm most concerned about is Bengals winning out. Second is probably the Dolphins-Colts thing. And third, Broncos losing to the Bengals in Kansas City, you could see that. They haven't really played well against winning teams this year either.
Yeah.
But that to me, that's the order. It's the Bengals are the concern for me, because they still are playing a sloppy brand of football the last couple of weeks despite winning.
How dare you discount all those moral victories that they've racked up throughout the season and all those near wins that we count as great showings from this team. I think that that's not the biggest concern to me. I think that they will win out because, it might not matter. And that just feels like that would be the most heartbreaking way for this whole thing to unfold, is if they take care of business and everything else kind of lines up. I don't know. If you're looking at this right now and you had to pick a scenario that would really kind of just fit with the rest of this season, with how frustrating it's been, how close it's been, what is the result that would really feel the most 2024 Bengals to you?
Would have to be the most diabolical, heartbreaking fashion for the fan base, which is what this whole season has been. So I would say it's clearly everything falls their way. Bengals Steelers gets flexed into Sunday night as a game that will decide who gets in or something like that, or some sort of where it's clear what they need. All they got to do is go win and beat the Steelers in Pittsburgh. They have a lead and the defense hemorrhages, and then they like miss a kick and have a fumble or something and lose by a point to the Steelers, right? Like that's this season. That's the way all of these games have gone, and you turn to and of course Burrow has to throw for like at least 450 and 4 tutties in that game, right?
It's like the finale of a fireworks show when all the old things come together and it's like, oh, there's the bad defense, there's the inopportune fumble, here's the missed McPherson field goal all together. I think it would be probably all of this happening, right? Bengals win out, the Dolphins lose their game, Colts lose a game, and we get down to that Broncos Kansas City game. Kansas City did lose, so they've got something to play for. It comes down to the final minute, and Kansas City has a 4th and 16 where there's a clear pass interference. They don't throw the flag for once, and Bengals fans are left to complain about the fact that the one flag that Kansas City never got is the one they needed the most.
Yeah.
That's the most heartbreaking way.
It was funny early in the Thursday night game last night when Bengals fans are sitting here just rooting for the Chargers, and the Chargers defense lets up 3 easy touchdown drives to start the game.
Easy.
Like, even when they're rooting for a different team, the defense is trash.
It's still letting them down. Still, it's just the Bengals curse.
But we will not let you down, Mark. You know why?
Why?
'Cause we're here. We're givers.
We are.
It's the Christmas season, the gifting season. And so if you're a Growl Pal, you listen to this show, you know how much we care about you guys. And that's why this Sunday at 10 o'clock at BetMGM, Nation Kitchen Bar down at the Banks, our latest live show, we're doing the Christmas show, and we're just giving gifts. We're just giving gifts to all of you. If you show up, I'm going to tell you you're going to walk out with a gift. I'm saying that right now. I'm just putting that out there. Now the level might be different for some than others, but we got good stuff. We've got a Pete Johnson and Jeff Blake signed jerseys. We have Burrow and Chase jerseys. We have team merchandise, sweaters, hoodies, hats, things like that. We have a Graders shipper pack that you can send if you've forgotten to buy a gift for somebody.
Great.
Bam, you can put them down, and the next thing you know, the Graders shows up and you're a hero, right? Look, I'm going to say if you have interest in going to the Bengals-Broncos game on that Saturday at 4:30, you might want to show up to our show.
Oh,
you might want to show up to our show. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not saying anything. Other than there could be surprises that happen.
And who doesn't love surprises this time of year? You know,
you never know what's going to be in the gift. You never know what's inside of the box. You never know when Uncle Donnie comes through with the gift that you never expected to get. And that could be what could happen here.
Yeah, okay. Especially because he's blown it for like the last 3 Christmases. So he really goes all out on this one to kind of make up for it. Like that's the magic that really elevates a holiday. And our Growl Pals, they deserve this. That's what this came down to. We talked about what this show should be. It could be a preview show. It could be get a guest. And we're like, no, why don't we just throw the focus on our people? The season hasn't gone exactly the way the Bengals fans wanted, but our Growl Pals, our season of the Growler podcast has gone exactly how we would have wanted. You know, it's been a great first year for this show. And so it's only fitting that we're giving back to the people on this one and making sure the Growl Pals have a happy holiday.
That's what we're here to do. So come on down. We'll be down there between 10 and 11 with all the gifts. Of course, we'll still have our drink specials and all the delicious food that they have at Nation. We'll be having a great time. So we hope to see you down there. Come on down before the game against the Browns on Sunday, 10 a.m. We'll be going for an hour. So come on down and you're going to get some gifts and we'll show some appreciation to you guys. You all deserve it for sure. Okay. What's your story of the week?
It's got to be swords. It's got to be
swords.
Joe Burrow giving his offensive line katanas for Christmas.
Yeah.
Like that is, I saw that news come out, and I think that you were the one that had it first, right?
Yeah.
Or at least on my feed you were.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So what happened was we're in the locker room yesterday, and it's kind of a boring-ish day in the locker room. There's not really a lot going on. And so I'm kind of standing around. I was waiting for one person, but I hadn't seen them. People were in a meeting, whatever. And all of a sudden I just see Cody Ford, and he's pulling a sword out of a sheath. And I'm like, what the hell's going on over here? So kind of go over there, start talking to Cody, like, what, are you a sword guy? Why do you have it? How'd you get it here? And it's like, Joe gave us all these. Like, what? It's like, yeah. And then Orlando Brown comes up and he's talking about it. And he's like, yeah, everyone has its own story, where it's from some town or from some battle or whatever, and the background on it. And he put all of these in the equipment room and had us all go in there and kind of just blindly pick which one we wanted. And it comes, so it's the sword, obviously in the sheath, and then it comes in like, it has like a bag and like a holding stand and the whole thing. And they're like taking it out slowly and looking at it, and I'm just like, this is incredible. Like, what an awesome gift. Like, just to think about the idea of, in your man cave for the rest of your life, you can hang a katana up on the wall, right? And if anybody comes there, they're gonna be like, what is that? Like, that's a katana, and I got it from Joe Burrow.
Yeah,
Like,
and you can start talking about
I was playing
ancient
football.
battles.
Yeah, from ancient battles. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's from the Battle of Ping. I don't know. I don't know what the battles are.
Battle of Ping. Good
I don't
point.
know. I don't know.
point.
I don't know what the battles are, but they're all different. And so, like, so you're like sitting here and you can say that, oh yeah, I played in Cincinnati for a couple of years, and Burrow got me a sword. It was sick.
Yeah, I mean, think of all the stuff that's gonna be on your wall in a man cave. It might be like, oh, jersey swaps with my college guys. There's their pro uniforms, or here's, my cleats from this big bowl game win in college. Whatever. Here's the jersey I wore, the ball for my first touchdown. All that stuff is kind of the same. It just runs together. But when you have a freaking katana on your wall, that's a story everybody wants to hear. People are going to want to swing that bad boy around and really get a feel for that. I love it. I love that Burrow. Also, like, if you're Burrow too, it's like, you're in the news because people are breaking into your house. Are people going to break into Joe Burrow's house now that they know he's buying everybody's swords?
Yeah.
You don't know what you're running.
You got to feel like maybe he bought a couple also for his new security detail, whoever those people are. Probably.
Yeah. Whoever's in his house is going to be wielding swords. Probably. You can't even risk that. You don't know what you're going to run into.
Definitely sending a message.
Forget the Battle of Ping. This is going to be way worse than that. You can't even mess with that. You can't even go on the street anymore.
Yeah. So this is a question that I raise, because it was also out there that Brock Purdy got his offensive lineman cars.
Oh no. That was
so
sad.
he got them like Toyota trucks. Now, it clearly looked like a sponsored, like
1,000,000%.
Yeah, the video was like a lot of shots of Toyota and the interior and the guys being amazed at them. And I'm like, okay, would you rather receive a sword, okay, like that, or would you rather have been playing for Brock Purdy and gotten, the Toyota Tundra or whatever the hell that was, in what was potentially maybe even just an ad drop?
Yeah, am I getting royalties from this Toyota commercial I was in? Because that's how it feels. Like, it's just, oh, you got a 2-year lease on this Toyota Tundra, and he just starts talking about the gas mileage and this and that. Like, it felt, and I get it. Listen, he doesn't make that much money. He's making $1 million a year or something. You throw in endorsements and stuff. Maybe you don't have sword money, and you have to work out some sort of sponsorship deal with the local Toyota dealer to hook your guys up with something. It just, that whole thing felt so awkward. And those guys were like, whoa, cool. Toyota. I love the Toyota Tundra. And it's like, no, he's reading ad copy. He's just working it into this little video.
I love you heard the phrase about people that have, F you money or screw you money, right? I like the idea of having sword money. Like that even is on top of that on the scale of level. I guess sword money. All right. You don't want to mess around with me.
I mean, is there any better indicator of how his life has changed since that big contract? Like, he's over in Paris and fashion shows, and at end of the year taxes, like his expense report has a Batmobile and a bunch of katanas on it. Like, yeah, he's different now. Things have changed in Joe Burrow's world. It's like like an 8th grader won the lottery or something. I'm going to buy a Batmobile. I'm going to buy all my friends ninja swords. It's going to be the greatest day ever. And I love
absolutely. I will say there were a lot of good reactions. So the tweet and social posts obviously took off as people were mesmerized by this, and so there was a lot of fun happening in my mentions and quotes, which is different from what normally is happening in there. So I appreciated a changing tone. A few that I enjoyed, which was a fellow NFL beat writer, my guy Greg Allman, who covers the NFC South, immediately thought about what beat writers think about. I'd keep an eye on that Friday injury report. Right, like immediately, like, oh no, the injury report. Like the last thing you need is Cody Ford parentheses sword. You know what I mean? Like, there was a couple comments about the idea that Alex Kappa has one and he was in the concussion protocol. Feels like a bad combo. Good luck to the other 31 quarterbacks in the NFL. Nothing will top this. Bengals to the playoffs out of nowhere confirmed. Which, I mean, nothing. Look, it does feel different now. Forget the numbers. Throw the numbers out. It feels like the playoffs feel more realistic because the sword thing. Like that feels like everybody's wielding swords now, ready to rock. It feels like the whole season just changed.
I do think that would be awesome. And if the NFL is rigged, I hope it is, because then the Bengals absolutely will go to the playoffs, because you got to have Joe Burrow there for the ratings, for the electricity to that offense. But think about what that does to the fan base. If the katanas turn it all around and they do sneak in, like every single fan is going to be carrying one of those like little plastic ones in the stands and waving it around. It's going to be the biggest gift for Bengals fans. They want their own replica katana in their man cave. It's going to take on a life of its own at that point. It'll become the symbol we all rally behind.
People for decades will have a poster of all the offensive linemen in front of Burrow with their swords, in like with a Super Bowl patches on them. You know what I mean? Like that will be the Magnum 44. I had like SWAT team when I was a little kid, like from the 88 team when I was little. And so everybody has it, or everybody had the Jordan poster, the same one, like that for people in Cincinnati, that'll be the new one. It'll be the offensive lineman. This embattled, some might say, offensive line, but changing the way they play. They play out of their minds. They're just defending Burrow at every snap. Every time he gets touched, they just fight somebody, and it all changes, and they can take the katanas.
And I think that is something that it wouldn't just be a poster. I think that maybe you'd see people get like some artwork done of that, so a little bit of watercolor action on there, so it looks like a little ancient. And here's just a group of large men with swords, and the caption is just the Battle of Ping 2024. It really is going to live forever in Bengals lore. What did Burrow get his offensive lineman last year before he was super rich? He didn't get him anything as cool as this, right?
Last year's gift. I don't remember last year's gift. So I'm sure it was cool, but I do not.
Mahomes did. I saw Mahomes did.
When he was rich. I mean, he had gotten paid last year, but I don't remember. It definitely isn't as memorable as this one. I'd have to go look that up and figure out what it was.
Mahomes got his guys like watches and Yeti coolers. That's what I like. It looked like a bunch of nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough scene for the rest of the quarterbacks out there right now after the Burrow Purdy drop. Like, that's tough.
I mean, I think he should also include a ride on the Batmobile, or at least that would have been cooler if he's like, guys, come out to the parking lot. He opens up the Batmobile, which I know he doesn't have yet, but then there's just swords spilling out of it. Like, go grab yourself one.
It's perfect. It's perfect. All right. Should we flip forward to some questions?
Let's do it.
Some questions here. I know the people probably have some.
Growl pals.
There's lots of questions about what's going on. So what do the Growl Pals got for us?
I do want to say this, because we do have the Growler Bet every week, which also floods the inbox. So if you did have a question that was thoughtful and, well reasoned, well written, and we didn't read it on the show or didn't respond to it, actually, there is a chance it was lost. We don't hate any of the Growl Pals. We're not freezing you out. So, feel free to resend those to the growlerpodcast@gmail.com. Because I know there's probably been some good stuff lost in the shuffle of all of those. But we had a lot of great things we didn't lose. And I do have on this list. So we're going to start with this one. Hey, guys, love the podcast. Satiates my Bengals addiction throughout the week when there aren't games to stress me out. Colin Cowherd did a bit on his show about Joe Burrow's most recent press conference concerning the Burrow-Taylor spat. His take was essentially, as long as the Brown family is going to be the Brown family, then Burrow won't reach another Super Bowl as long as he plays in Cincinnati. This is a standard take I hear from national media. Part of me feels like it's very true, but I also feel like all things are possible with Joey B as your quarterback. Are you as pessimistic about Burrow's chances to lead this franchise to another Super Bowl unless the Brown-Blackburn family takes the unlikely step of really opening up the pocketbook? That is our first question from Michael.
Okay. Well, I will say this. No, I'm not pessimistic about it. I don't know that. Yes, they need to be better at winning on the margins. They mostly just need to draft better. Like they mostly need to get back on the run of hitting consistently on draft classes. And that can solve a lot of the problems that they're having there. Look, they have a top 5 offense, and they did spend and build a defense the right way. They have one of the most expensive defensive line in football. They spent money on veterans. They drafted a ton of players underneath it. They just haven't developed or hit. I mean, there's been problems all over the place there, but it's not because they didn't spend. They spent poorly, or their plans backfired on them. But there are plenty of times in the past where where they have spent and not spent poorly. I mean, the entire time from 20 to 22, they spent and they drafted largely pretty well, mostly spent well. But they had plenty of good draft picks in the early years of Zach Taylor's time here that built those teams. So the idea that they're totally inept and incapable of pulling this off is crazy when you have Burrow. Also, the idea that's out there about, well, no team that has a quarterback making at least 13% of the cap has won the Super Bowl in the last 30 years, and that changed last year when Patrick Mahomes won it at 17%. It is different now because more quarterbacks are getting paid, right? I mean, your competition are other teams doing the same thing. They have to be better at winning in the margins and winning in the draft, period. That's what it is. But I mean, think about it. If you're not facing a bunch of teams in the top of the league right now, AFC or NFC, that are full of these rookie star quarterbacks that have this major advantage on you. I mean, who would you like in the playoffs right now? Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore, the Chargers. Those are all teams that have paid their quarterback. Or would you take Pittsburgh, Houston, and Denver? Like,
yeah,
the teams with the real paid quarterback. Like, those are the teams that are the favorites. Same thing in the NFC. Detroit with Jared Goff, Philly with Hurts, Tampa Bay with Mayfield, the Rams with Stafford, Green Bay, Jordan Love, all paid quarterbacks. These are the teams that are competing. Like, these are the teams that are making it to the end. I think that there wasn't a bigger advantage before when there were a lot more of these young quarterbacks and that were on those rookie deals, and not as many of them were getting paid at the levels they are now. Now, so many of them are, and so a lot of teams are living that life. So I don't think it's as big of a deal to think that they can't still do it that it used to be, but they do need to get back on some of the runs that they've had in drafting when they've been good.
Yeah, I guess it's a question of like, were they really unlucky this year because they just blew it on a lot of draft picks recently, and some of the free agency signings just didn't pan out? I know I gave Geno Stone a lot of crap this season. He was good last week. He seemed, like that's kind of what you thought you might get from him all season, but you didn't. Sheldon Rankins has been sick, but even before that wasn't like a big player for you. So is it that they're unlucky this year, or were they just lucky for that 2-year span when they were really good? What's the truth here, Paul?
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to judge. I mean, you're talking about a 6-year span with this group the way it is, okay, between Duke Tobin and Mike Potts and Steve Radicevich and Zach Taylor and that whole group that's been tasked with picking all of these players and making free agency decisions. Okay, so you're talking about the span, and they made it to the Super Bowl and the AFC Championship game as part of that span, and then they've had some down years in terms of player acquisition in recent years, most of them on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, a lot of the young offensive players we've talked about have panned out, have been good picks. Chase Brown, Eric All, Amarius Mims. Like there are hits in these recent years where a lot of the bad things are happening that have been good. Andre Iosivas, I mean, for a 6th-round pick, again, is giving you more than, above average production. All those guys I just mentioned are giving you or gave you that. And so you see that. And so it makes you say, well, what's going on the defensive side of the ball? Maybe it's that the development isn't happening, and maybe that's not a picks issue. Maybe somebody else could come in and get more out of them. Maybe not. Maybe it's the players are bad. They'll find out probably one way or the other, no matter what they do, with Lou Anarumo or if they decide to move on from him. But I don't think it's that it's an impossible task. Like they won't know how to do it. I think that there's plenty of ability to think that they could get back on a roll like they've been on before.
And it only takes a few hits to really flip the script there on the defense. And I mean, the offense, like Mike Gesicki, that was a great signing. He's had a very solid year. Orlando Brown has kind of lived up to that contract that he got. He wasn't a bust. So like they've had some hits. It's not like the offensive free agency has been all Irv Smiths. There's an Irv Smith in there, here and there, but the defense felt like it was all Irv Smiths this year. So like, you can't just keep missing that aggressively. Right. Although maybe you're right that like maybe the new voice thing, that could be a part of it. At this point, it does feel like there's probably got to be some sort of move. Would it surprise you more if Lou is back next year or T. Higgins is back next year? Which would surprise you more at this point?
Yeah, if Lou is back. I mean, at least there's Joe Burrow out here saying T's a need and he needs to come back. I don't, and Joe did say nice things about Lou this week, but I don't know that any of the same clamoring or momentum exists on the other side of the ball. Like we've just seen what that defense has been for a couple of years now. T. Higgins, I mean, he may be expensive or whatever, but if you look around and you're not sure who you're going to pay, and there's a way to get it done, and he's changed his agent. I mean, that's momentum. I don't know that any of the same momentum exists on the Lou side right now, but again, offseason is wild, wild west. You never 100% know how anything's going to go.
Those are different starting points too, because the way that the organization doesn't always make a lot of moves. And T. Higgins, we thought it was out the door. Like that percentage was very low.
Changed. It changes quick. All of a sudden you got Burrow out here saying things, and he's changing agents, and there's this, there's a possible chance.
It still feels unlikely, right? Like,
I don't think it
is
feels
so much
likely.
more expensive.
Yeah, I think it still feels. It's hard to get a real gauge on it. It's such a moving target right now, and nobody expect. I don't know how many people expected this turn of events over in recent weeks with that situation. So, and I'm positive that it will turn again once we start going through the offseason, the beginning parts of the offseason, and see what it has in store. But the combination of all of it does suggest that there is real momentum for that potentially happening. That doesn't mean that they get there. It's going to take them not botching it, and we've seen how that's gone in the past.
Good point on that. This next one's from Charlie from Indian Hill. He said he was listening to this week's episode with Charlie Goldsmith. Where do you start? And it got me wondering. Chase Brown and Giovanni Bernard, haven't we been down this road before? Help me understand the present and future of Chase Brown compared to our old hero Gio.
So this is from Charlie, and is Charlie sending in questions about his own show now?
I hope so.
Is he trying to drum up more talk? He's got good buzz out there. He doesn't need to drum up anymore by sending in questions about his own segments.
I would like to think
we trace this back.
Yeah, I think he would have at least changed his name a little bit, right? And gone with like Charles. A little more
Chuck.
formal.
I mean, we wouldn't take much.
Chuck from
all
Indian
right.
Hill.
Well, I hope that Charlie is trying to drum up more excitement about his show, because it's a great show and he does an awesome job on it. I will say this. I don't totally see the Gio comp. I get it. They're undersized running backs and all that stuff. Chase is a way better receiver than Gio ever was, and right now, and certainly a much bigger weapon. Chase is kind of what they wanted Gio to be in the passing game. Gio kind of became a screens guy, an excellent pass protector. But never, you kept wanting him to be a guy who could go out there and run routes from the slot or whatever, but he never really was able to totally do that. Chase Brown's doing that already. He's doing that very well. And so I think, size, stature, some of the explosiveness stuff. Gio was much more shifty. His lateral explosiveness was crazy. He had that stuff going for him. But I don't necessarily see them as similar backs. I've made the Kyron Williams comp a bunch from the Rams with Chase Brown, late round pick, became a heavy workload guy with the Rams and really help jumpstart their offense. He has been back again, doing it again this year for the Rams, high volume. I think Chase Brown is going to be a high volume guy until his production changes, because he's proven, his chemistry he's developing with Burrow goes a really long way. You're going to have another. They want a tandem, but Chase Brown is going to be taking the majority of the snaps on that tandem, I think, at least for another year or two.
Yeah, clearly there's going to have to be another back that's brought in, whether it's through free agency or the draft, but it doesn't feel like it'll be a 1A, 1B situation anymore. It definitely feels like it would be a much more like a 66, 33% breakdown, something like that. And Chase Brown,
you want to save him. I mean, you don't want to wear him down over the course of a year, and you want to have another guy you can turn to in case something happens to Chase, which is inevitable at some point. But this is what he was in Illinois. I mean, in Illinois, he was high volume, college's leading rusher type guy. He can handle it. He just kind of goes and doesn't get tired. And so there's a lot of things that think that he can take it, but you want to have a solid number two and a guy that can be rotational to save him so that he is truly his freshest at the end of the season.
It's nice watching him develop this late in the season, because as a Bengals fan, it gives you hope, right? That like, oh, here's a guy we didn't necessarily count on for a lot, and now he's got a little bit of momentum. I just wish the defense had a Chase Brown. I wish there was some late round draft pick that was actually establishing himself as a player to watch going forward. It feels like there are too many splash plays made by guys that aren't coming back next year, or at least going to be free agents. Like BJ Hill's making plays, or Mike Hilton makes a play. And it's like, you want somebody that would have just developed into a real player from the draft. And it maybe McKinley Jackson, but I mean, he was like a 3rd round pick. So you kind of expect him to be.
I mean, he's
productive.
made a couple of flat splash plays. I think Cam Taylor-Britt has really settled down since the latest benching. I know it's kind of he's just in a weird place this year. It's hard to really pinpoint what's happened with him, but he's played a lot better lately. And he did have a pick against Tennessee. But he's played better besides that. You're getting a lot of reps and a lot of look at Josh Newton, and it's some up, some down. So you're not quite seeing what you're talking about there, but there's some to like. You got a few more games for those guys to show something, but yeah, I mean, you haven't seen all the types of guys we were talking about on the offensive side of the ball. You're right. I mean, we just haven't seen those on the defense.
Our next question, I like how this one starts. Thank you, Paul, Mark, and Jay Mo, for all the gifts that you've given us all this year with these podcasts. They make the daily dog walk so much better. Genuinely appreciate all you do for us and wish you all the best for a great Christmas with your families. Right away, just a great email out of the chute.
Great email. In fact, do we even need the question after that?
We're just going to read praise every week from now on. That's all this is. Forget your Q's and A's. Yeah. It's just a praise podcast. He does have a cue for you, though. Every week, I'm astonished at the punishment Burrow takes. Part of it is a line that's dropped off this year. Part of it's Joe's propensity to hang on to the ball to let the play develop and even to go off script and search for that open receiver. But Joe spoke earlier this year that I don't get those calls on late hits, etc. Zach Taylor said I have to do a better job bringing the hits to the attention of the officials, but it persists. Every week, face masks get missed. Hits to the helmet get missed. Cheap shots after the ball has gone out get missed. Yet famously, Brady and Mahomes get calls, and the mantra is the league wants to protect its star players. Yet every week, Burrow's taking hits that could cause another knee, wrist, shoulder, or God forbid, head issue. Why does this keep happening? Does the league just not care? Do the Bengals not do good enough job lobbying? It seems not just with the Bengals, but officials are missing bad face mask calls every week. Do we just see them more with slow motion cameras all over the field compared to the past? Or are officials worse than they've ever been?
Well,
it's a big one to unpack.
That's a lot to unpack. I will say that I don't think Burrow is the only one that this is happening to. I think that this is a problem around the league in some respects. I mean, there's a lot of guys that don't get calls. But yeah, it's really surprising that he has been allowed to take this many hits without flags. The face mask thing, I think, there's real buzz that's going to get changed to being reviewable. And if that makes you feel better, there could be flags for that, and you could review that in the future. You're right. I mean, you also know that opponents aren't necessarily very scared that the Bengals offensive linemen are going to fight them if they do it. I think that's an underlying part of this. They see it during the week. You turn on the film and you see it every week where you're seeing a couple extra shots. And I do think that makes them want to go out there and get theirs in and not afraid to get theirs in. I think a lot of the lobbying that happens with the league in the background, with the referees in the background before games, of being like, look, this is a thing that's been going on all year. We really feel like it hasn't been fair. Please keep your eye out for this stuff. Like, this has been going on, and it's been, the league said X, Y, and Z to it. And I feel like that's a lot of where, yelling it across the field during a game, there's only so much you can do. I think they've more tried to lay the groundwork so officials are just more aware that this is happening. It's kind of happening consistently. But yeah, it does seem to keep going on. Burrow's kind of said he doesn't really have an explanation for it. Zach Taylor's like, he wants to fight for it. He doesn't, but he's dying to get the calls too. It's hard to understand why it hasn't totally happened. I don't have a great answer for you on that other than you're right. I mean, it's obvious that it does keep happening, but I do think it happens too. If you watch a lot of the Bengals and you're only watching the Bengals mostly every week, you notice it more. You care about Joe Burrow's livelihood. Every hit you feel in your soul. You don't feel that with Sam Darnold when his head's getting turned around backwards, or with, Josh Allen even, or whoever. But so I get it. I think it seems more obvious when you're watching them all the time. But yeah, it's a problem, I think.
All right, our next question. This one is from Steven. He says, gents, as always, stay golden. If that tutty was Hubbard's last snap as a Bengal, is he worthy of the Ring of Honor? Obviously, one of the most iconic plays in team history, and the 2 sacks on Mahomes in the AFC Championship game. But overall, is Sam Hubbard the Ring of Honor type of player?
I don't know that he's Ring of Honor. I don't know that his stats, lend to that, especially when you consider how hard it is right now to get into the Ring of Honor because of the limited number of names that are there, and they're going to have to eventually start flushing through decades worth that weren't even on the original list once they get through the original list. I mean, so I don't think so. That said, I mean, his legacy is as good as any that have been around recently. I mean, there should be a photo from the Hubbard Yard Dash plastered somewhere big on the stadium like there are from the 2021 run somewhere. He'll never have to buy a drink in this town again. I just feel like he's got legacy. I don't know that he has the stats and necessarily to lend to being up there in the Ring of Honor, but he's got everything else. And I think it would be a shame if you didn't see a photo of him up somewhere specifically from that iconic moment in the history of the stadium and the franchise.
It does seem like there's a little bit more leniency with the Ring of Honor process. Like maybe you can finagle it a little bit easier than the Hall of Fame process. Do you think there's a world where Joe Burrow, let's zoom out 10 years, 20 years, wins a couple Super Bowls in Cincinnati, becomes one of the biggest stars in the NFL? Do you think then maybe when they're starting to get to players from this era, that extra nudge from Joe Burrow to the family could get Hubbard in there? Like, hey, take care of my guy. Just, throw me this solid. Let me get an extra Ring of Honor spot here for my buddy. Remember those Super Bowls I won you? Do you think that would be enough to help get him over the top, or is that still not enough?
I mean, if Burrow wants Sam's name next to him in the Ring of Honor, then it probably ends up there. But, he might bake that into his next contract.
Yeah,
maybe
work it in.
It's like, I need Sam Hubbard in the Ring of Honor and $525 million.
And a second Batmobile.
In a second.
Just in case the first ever.
And 89 swords.
Yeah, that would be awesome. 89 swords just to hand out to everybody, just so he's constantly surrounded by a fleet of swords everywhere he goes.
People wielding swords just to keep him safe. I love it. I love it.
We have an ambush light question. Are you ready for this?
Let's go.
Dear Growlers, kicking the nuts here. That's what he calls himself, aka last place in the Kickers League. This is the Kickers Only Fantasy League guy.
The Kickers Only Fantasy League is back. I love it.
He's got a question relative to all the Bengals Titans weirdness you've talked about. He says that his playoff final for this Kickers Only Fantasy League is cumulative points in weeks 15 and 16. So every point matters in week 15. He had the Titans kicker. They scored the touchdown at the end of the game. No times left. He was expecting that extra point still, but since the game's over, just handshakes. What happened here? Did he decide not to kick it? Is it an NFL rule to not kick it? If they score with 1 second left, they kick it, right? They do. I could easily lose 5th place in the loser bracket because of the non-kick. Please explain. And then he also, the question's pretty straightforward, but he also says that some of the people in this league know Jay, and Jay mentioned that he wants to join the Kickers Only Fantasy League next year. So, and he says that we're invited to join as well. And that is from Bob, aka Kicking the Nuts. I don't know if I'm going to join the fantasy Kickers Only Fantasy League here.
I think Jay definitely wants in. So if there's a spot, I
you got to make a spot for Jay.
I think after talking about it with him, I think he's ready. I think he's ready to join, and he's got rule ideas, and you're going to find that out.
Jay's got rules.
Jay's got rules. But I'll say this. So the NFL actually changed this rule a couple of years ago, and it was because they didn't want people having to bring people back out on the field when it appeared like a game was over. It was usually for game-winning touchdowns. A team would win the game, everyone would celebrate like crazy people, and then they'd be like, oh, no, you got to trot somebody back out to kick the extra point because we always kick the extra point. So I think now it's a thing where if it doesn't decide the outcome of the game, they don't make you kick the extra point if there's no time left. So that I think it's part of that rule. It's you see that every once in a while where it's like what's going on? Is that like the third string quarterback is out there as a center on the whole, like, because they just can't get enough, just everyone's everywhere. They wanted to avoid that altogether. They can make a decision of if it affects the game, the score, then do it. If not, so I think that's part of what that was. But yeah, of course, just one more ridiculous thing to add on to that game.
I do think that gambling might have some sort of pressures on that in the future, right? Like a lot of people might want those extra points for these over bets and that kind of stuff.
That's the rule.
Rules can change when you've got half your sponsors being gambling places, maybe it needs to be a little bit friendlier to those people.
Is Raj eventually going to kiss the ring of the Kickers Only Fantasy League and bring that back? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
it recognizes what they mean to the league.
Most times a commissioner would ignore kicking the nuts, but if you think kicking the nuts might have a sword, you're like, hey, I don't know. This is a big thing in Cincinnati. They're sword people now. Maybe we should hear this guy out and help him get 5th place in his fantasy league.
I love it. We have Growler Bet. Growler Bet is up for this week. We talked about it yesterday with all the penalty stuff that's been going on with the Bengals. We've gone with Bengals penalty yards in this game against the Browns. So make sure you send in your submissions to the Growler Podcast at gmail.com. You can still submit them on X with hashtag Bengals Growler Bet if you want to send them in there. But the email is always a good place to go. The Growler Podcast at gmail.com. Bengals penalty yards against the Browns. And if you win, we had 2 winners last week. So could be you again.
And what did they win?
You win a barbell at one of our live shows at Nation. A barbell, yeah, 25 pound barbells. We'll just send them directly to your house. We'll ship them. No barbell, yes,
yeah. So it's another great 2 more growl pass. Like you get to win that, and then you can come to the show, and then probably win a prize too this week. That's a double. That's a double win for those 2 guys.
Double win, absolutely. What do we got now? Let's see. Kyle, what's going on with you? Where are you at?
Stand-up world. Let's see. I'm off this weekend. First weekend off in like three and a half months or so. So that's nice. Holiday mode now for me. And then I fire back up New Year's Eve, Toledo Funny Bone. I'm headlining there. That's always a big night in the comedy world. So if you know any friends that live in Toledo or near Toledo, buy tickets to that now. That's on sale now. And go watch my Nate Land set. It's out there on Nate Bargatze's YouTube platform. So go watch that. And I know he put a clip on his social media, so go find all that stuff. And I'll have more 2025 dates probably next week to announce.
Yeah, looking forward to that. You get some more around here. Are you gonna do more home shows in Loveland again next year?
That's a great question. I don't know if I can faith the Loveland people.
You broke your rule this past year. You willing to go back in again?
I think I would. I think I could do maybe I'll do like a quarterly show or something, just a standing show in Loveland at some venue where it's kind of a looser show. That could be something to do for 2025. I know right now the only local show I've got is February 15th. That I'm going to be doing a show at Commonwealth Sanctuary. So that's another big one for all you local Growl pals. If you miss me, go bananas.
Love that. Love that. Dad Lifetime. I want to open up. Are you Elf on the Shelf people?
No, thank God. Although we have been getting so much pressure from this because we have our middle daughter. She's in 3rd grade. Her best friend has one. And every day her best friend's like, I'm going to write to my elf to send you guys an elf. I'm like, that doesn't work like that. No, we can't have elves sending other elves to different houses that didn't expect it. And every day it's like she's in this phase where she's asking for an elf more than she wants a puppy, which was her previous obsession. So we've avoided it so far, but it's coming closer and closer for us.
We had an incident with the elf where the elf was in a stocking that was hanging off of the mantle, and I don't know if like kind of popping its head out, right? It has the hat, and I don't know if it was like wind in the room, but the stocking kind of twisted a little bit and it knocked the elf's hat off. And I haven't seen this face on my daughter in a long time of just pure fear of like, Elfie's hat is on the ground. And I just, and it tests your ability to just like, we gotta explain this. My thought was like, look, the hat isn't part of Elfie. It's allowed to be on the ground. And I bet when Elfie goes up to the North Pole overnight, probably going to swoop that hat right up on the way and just understand that's what it is. So did that. Elfie now holds on to the hat with its arms at this point because the hat's just not doing a great job of staying on its head for some reason. The pure fear, man, you don't see that every day. And you realize how attached we are to this thing.
It means that you need to be on top of your game too, just to help them deal with the terror of that situation. I did see maybe the worst Elf on a Shelf story I've ever heard. I saw the thing where like the mom had set it up with a cutesy little message. Mom had seen the cutesy little message first, right? So they were in the oven, I guess it was. And so she's like, oh, that's cute. I'm going to show the kids where the elf is today, right? And then before she could get the kids out of bed, the dad came downstairs. He didn't know where the elf was yet. He hadn't seen the elf, but he did turn on the oven to make some cinnamon rolls. Oh. And those elves had to go to a first aid station in the North Pole before that they could come back 100% the next day. But it was like a Patrick Mahomes injury, you're on the DL and then magically you're back the next day, totally healthy and good to go.
The Patrick Mahomes of elves. I love that.
Once somebody in the household spots that elf, it's their duty to quickly let everybody else know so there can't be any trauma like that.
No. What's going on in your dad life world?
Well, right now today's the last day of school, so we're just firing up all the teacher gifts and the gift cards for the bus drivers and it just feels like a big shakedown, like a mafia thing. Everybody gets an envelope, you got to pay off the bus driver, you got to where's the basketball coach or the this and that. Everyone's got to get a taste around the holiday season. You got to come strong to the teacher gifts every year. I don't know. What's the going rate for teacher gifts in your household?
Well, we contribute. There's like classroom group funds that go together. So we make sure we're making the contribution to that. And then the kids are always making stuff as well. So it's sort of a combination. We come from both sides, but yeah, I mean the gift cards and all of this, all that stuff, you got to be on top of it. Well, plus we still have aftercare and you have the school and multiple teachers there. And yeah, everybody else, it adds up. It adds up.
I like the whole, like, all right, everybody chip in for the teacher thing. But then you also think like, all right, I'm carrying all the weight for the deadbeats that didn't chip in anything now. And, some kid's going to do his own thing and look like the hero anyway, even though it was the same amount that our gift card would have been. You kind of fall into that. This happened to me one year in preschool. I'm not going to say the year just because I don't want to throw this class mom under the bus. but I sent in my contribution for the teacher gift to Venmo. I'm like, oh, that's easy. That's one we don't have to do individually. Here, send the money to her. She sent back half of it. She's like, this is too much. They don't need that much. I was like, whoa, who's gonna really knock down the price of the teacher gift and be like, all right, they don't need all this money. And
Your
it wasn't
generosity
a crazy amount.
is not deserved.
That maybe you shouldn't be a class mom if you're running interference on the gift itself. Not only are you organizing it, but you're actually diminishing it a little bit. Like, all right, hey, they don't need all these arts and crafts. They don't need these Starbucks gift cards. Maybe they can each get a firm handshake and a happy holidays wish, and that's all they need.
A receiving line at the room, handshake and a nod. That's what
it's the only time I've ever seen that energy from a class mom where she's just trying to tamp it down.
Love that. That's not our energy.
Nope. We are ramping it up Sunday.
We're ramping it up. We're just givers. We're giving the big gifts. So we'll be down there Sunday. Hope to see you guys 10 a.m. At Nation Kitchen and Bar down at the Banks. Just if you park downtown, take the streetcar stop, drops you right off at the front door. If you're down there going to the party on the street, or if you have your tailgate planned, just pop on in and then head on down your tailgate and with your new gifts that you've gotten and go on about your day. It's going to be a blast. We've had such a good time down there this year, and we appreciate all y'all that have come out. So we want to make sure we're rewarding you. So we hope to see you guys down there on Sunday, 10 o'clock.
It's always a fun hang, regardless of how many prizes you walk out the door with. If you want to bring us gifts, you can do that too. I will take any good betting advice that you have, since it's college football bowl season. If there's a game that you like, an over that you like, make sure you hit me with that so we can all get rich together.
Yeah, love that. All right. We will talk to you next at the live show and then on the walkout. So hope to see you guys down there this weekend. Have a good one, everybody.